Hello, this is Doll. I'm going to be going through some advanced coloring techniques here today. Uh, to start with, we got this picture of stocking that I have already worked on. This is the original image that I worked off of. This is basically the finished image, only with just a flat coloring style on it. You'll notice that there's no gradient or mesh or anything on it. And if we expand this, we'll see that I've done three different variations. I've done a flat, a gradient, and a mesh variation. So if I hide the flat layer, you can see what it looks like with some gradients in it. And if I hide this, you'll see that I added a little bit of mesh to the image in order to give it a little bit more of the soft feel that the original image had. You'll see it's not a big change, but it is there. So to start with, we'll just go with the inks layer that I have here. We're going to actually just go ahead and hide this and bring in this extra one I have here. And then we'll make a new layer underneath of it all. I'm going to just name it New Flats. And then for just, default coloring, you can always just go in and use your pen tool to just start doing your colors. So, now I could do all of this for you, but that'd be a little bit inefficient since I've already done the tracing of it all. So I'm gonna just go ahead and go into this layer and make a copy of the flats layer and put it. And we're just gonna go ahead and hide that. Now you'll see that I already have the flats layer created. Actually, if we turn this one on, I can go in and hide all of these except for the eye, because I did the eyes on its own layer, and we'll just do that on top of everything else. Alright, so pretty simple to do all the tracing and everything on it. It's just flat blocks of color. Not much to say there. And then let's say we want to do this now only with some gradients. Well, I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard and click in the eye here, and it'll turn this color layer into an outline mode. This is an easy way of basically just going in and seeing what's behind that layer. Makes it easier for you to grab your eyedropper tool, which is right here. You can also hit the I button and then go in and pick some colors. So I've already picked most of the colors that we had here. Oh, and actually while we're at it, there is a option that I wanted to do on this. If you double click on that, you can set your eyedropper tool to your raster sample size, which is basically when this tool picks up a color, point sample will pick the individual pixel that you're clicking on. 3x3 average and a 5x5 average means that it's going to take a 3x3 block of pixels and then take the average color of all of those, and this will take a 5x5. This can be handy when you're picking colors from a raster image like this, or like a JPEG or PNG or something, because you're getting closer to the true color rather than an individual pixel size. So it makes picking colors a little bit simpler. So like if I click right here, I'm getting an average of the colors in that area. Same with like here. Whereas if I had put it on individual, I'd be picking that individual image. And if we zoom in on that, you can see that you can get a pretty big color variation between those. So like in this area, you can see that this is lighter, this is darker still. So just something to keep in mind. So to start with, if we look at this shape here, we'll see that it's going from kind of a darker shade up to a lighter shade. So what I like to do is pick my eye tool, click on the top color, make a new swatch with that, go down to the bottom part, pick a color, make a new swatch with that, control click the eye so we have the eyeball again, select that shape. I'm hitting V to select to my direct select tool, but you should know that already. Click on the gradient layer here. So if that's not open, it's Window Gradient or Control plus F9 in Windows. And click on that. That'll turn it to a white and black gradient. Hit G to select your gradient tool, or come over here and click on the gradient tool and drag it down. You'll see that it's a white to black, and we want it that light blue to darker blue. So if we look here, we've got 2 points, a white and a black point. We can grab the blue and drag it in over the top of that point, and it switches it from black to the dark blue. Do the same thing with the white. Deselect it, and you'll see that we've got a gradient between those two colors here now. So we're going from the darker to the lighter there. Now, if we look at the original image, we'll see that, maybe this is a little dark here. So if we click on that image, you'll see that, we can come in here and adjust the color. This is currently on CMYK, or cyan, magenta, yellow, and K stands for black, or kerning, or whatever you want it to be. If we click on this little arrow thing here, you'll see a bunch of different options. As far as actually adjusting colors is concerned for eyeballing it, HSB tends to work the best. This stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. If you look, hue is the different shades of color you can get. Saturation is how much of the color is there, or how much white is there. So it's how vibrant it is, and brightness is how much black is in the image. So right now, like let's say we want to, this is 100% saturation and this is 100% saturation. So like if we wanted to make it a more dull color, we could drag the saturation down and it would debrighten it. So like right now we're on about 66.4. If we drag this down, you'll see that we're graying the image out quite a bit. Another reason it's going to a gray is because our brightness is at like about 50% brightness, which means there's about 50% black in the image. So even though we're at 100% white, we're at 50% black, so which makes a gray. So we were at about this color for brightness before, so if we want to lighten it up a little bit, you just remove some black. So you do that, and you look at it, and it's still not very bright. So if we move it over here, you'll see it richens it up. And same with this. So if we hide it again, you'll see it's pretty rich now. Whereas before, it was this color. So, you can eyeball colors. I find it's best to, use the eyedropper to grab a color, throw it in, eyeball what you want. You can edit individual colors on this as well. So like here, we probably want it, more of a vibrant blue. So that makes it more shiny. If you look here, this means it's out of gamut. That means that it's going to be hard for it to print. If you click on that, it'll move it to a color that's more print friendly. This is for a picture on the internet. We can leave it where it is. So that's the first shade. If we throw this back on, you can see where we can get other gradients in here. There's not a ton. We've got one here, which I'd do. I'd probably make these hard lines myself on this section. I'd probably gradient up all of this stuff, like the lines here, lines, and then, the gradient from a darker purple down to the flesh color here. So in order to do that, we'll do this one next. So eyedropper tool, select the color that you want, make a new swatch, same with this part. I'll make this back to, control click the eye to move it back and forth. Use our direct selection tool to select that shape. Click on the gradient tool again in order to convert that from just a flat color to a gradient. Pull in our two colors. If we look at this again, you'll see it's purple on top to gray at the top, or to blue at the bottom. G or the gradient. Drag her down. Did that backwards. And then here's where you can get into adjusting stuff a little more. See how with the gradient tool selected, if I put my mouse over the top of this, I can drag these around. This changes where the 50% blend mark is. So like if I have it here, this is going to be the 50%, so you're going to have more. This is where 100% is. So if I pull this down and pull this up, you're going to have 100% up to this point here where the swatch is, and then it's going to go down to 50% where this is, and then 100% here. So if this will just create a nice blend. This is just eyeballing it. You just play with it to get it close to where you want it. You see it's relatively close there. We can then select this and make a new gradient swatch out of it, and click on this one, and then we'll use that same swatch. So adjust it from here to here. We can move this back up, probably up to the top, because if we look at the original here, it's a pretty quick transition. Alright, now if we look at this, we'll see we've got kind of a vibrant pink there. We'll select that and make a new swatch. The middle color is less so, and then we can hide this. If we click on this, you'll see that I have made these into individual points. There's a reason for that, rather than just doing one big shape, and that's because I was planning on throwing a gradient in here before I started. So select that, click on the gradient, so we've got it as a gradient here. I'm going to pull in the bright color to both points, and then you'll see that it looks like just a solid color right now. We've got the lighter color, and I'm putting that in the middle. So right now, in order for this to work, we'd have to grab our gradient tool and pull it across. So see how we've got it kind of going back and forth. And if you look at our points here, you'll see that it's 50% in the middle, but our 50% mark is kind of way over here. So if we pull that over and this over, you'll see that it's a much smoother curve. Another way that we can get it so that if we look at this, you see it's kind of like a harder line where it's almost the same color through most of this. To do that, what we're going to do is grab this and pull in another one, and if we move this here, we can move that point over there, that point over there, and we'll move that a little bit more, but we're going to actually pull this like that. Problem with that, and you'll see that the angle is a little wrong. It's kind of weird. The black end of this is the inside, because right now this is just a big circle. So if you move your mouse over the tip here, you can change the angle to whatever you want. So like you see, that's a little extreme. That's pretty close, and that's about where we want it. You can also click on the end and drag it out farther. Same with this. One thing you're going to have to play around with this to get, what you want out of it. I mean, I personally, I would probably do this portion myself with the mesh, but we'll show you how to do that in a bit. And, we can make a new swash out of that. Select it. Bring it in. Make it a little smaller. Change the angle to what we think it should be. And then you can just keep going. Pretty simple stuff. This gives it a little bit more body. The problem with doing it this way is, it's hard to get the lines to actually follow curves. If it's straight, it works really well. And, last but not least, we'll do this one here. So eyeball it. Pretty close to flesh color there. So we're getting it right on the edge, and this is like kind of a deeper purple. And eyeball it. You can click on the gradient one in here as well to change it. I clicked on this one because I wanted a 2-point gradient for this, rather than, the 4-point gradient that we had. Like, let's say I pulled green into the middle. If you want to get rid of that, you can just click on the gradient and pull it off. So you look at this, pull this down a little bit, pull this up just a hair, and you'll see that you've got, darker purple faded down to more of a flesh color. Gives it a look of shadow underneath of her eyeballs. Problem with this is, again, it's not following the curves very well. One way you can try to get that set up is you can change your gradient type from a linear to a radial gradient, and set your points here like this, and maybe zoom it out like this and pull it in. Any points on here you can pull and adjust to wherever you need it. And same with this. So like, let's say we put this here, we put this here, and we throw it up right there. It curves and follows it a little bit better, but it's still not good, right? And then if we look at the overall image, you'll see that we're going from a lighter shade of blue up here down to a darker over here. So last thing to do is select that, grab a gradient, pull in the light to there, pull in the darker to there, hit the gradient tool, pull it like that, and then we can go in here and pull the color up so that it goes better. Now, I would actually probably recommend, when you're doing this, that you'll have to hit it to radial as well. I forgot about that. Alright, so you can pull this out to whatever size you want. I'm actually going to put this up on top of her head so that the shine is closer to there. I'm going to make it a little thinner. We're going to spin this around to here. The reason for that being, we can then extend this, then do this, And then if we look at this, you'll see that, I hit Control Z to undo that. You'll see that it's kind of like a really obvious bright point here. If we move this out a little bit, you'll see that we're getting, an oval or something in it like that. I like to try to repair that by, moving this out. So if we hide this whole colors layer, you'll see it looks basically like that. You'll notice that I'm not trying to stick super close to the actual colors that are here, but we're trying to make it look good without going overboard. Another thing we could do if we wanted to here is if I hide this, you'll see that there's like a little color inside of there. It's darker around the edges and thinner on the inside. You can quickly do that by, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That actual shape is hard to grab, so we'll ignore that. But you could just do like you could select that square. Actually, here, we'll just do it like this, quick. I'll just make a quick shape on top. Select that color, and you can like pull in a darker and a lighter shade. And pull it out a little bit. And that gives it kind of the hint of that. You just, radial gradient, and you just played with the sliders and everything a little bit in order to get it where you want it. Alright, so that's basic gradient coloring. I'm now going to hide this layer and lock it because we don't want that anymore. I'm going to go back to our finish layer, and I'm going to copy the that flats copy I did before and make another one here. So I've got something fresh to work off of and hide it. We're leaving it, or actually we're going to leave it on hid so we can see this. And we're going to do some mesh. We're going to start with the simple mesh and work our way up. So I'm going to go ahead and lock and hide this layer and make a new layer on top. The reason I made this is because I want a flats layer underneath for all the flats shapes that I'm going to have. So the first thing to do when working with mesh is to just grab your rectangle tool, or M, and make a square. So we're going to color this a flat color. The color doesn't really matter too much. I'm going to be doing this shape here, so we'll see that we have the kind of a darker lines throughout here and here. So what you do is you get a square and make sure it covers the entire area. I'm going to then grab the mesh tool, or U, and do I have outlines hidden? Yeah, I got edges hidden. So view, edges, hide edges, Control H. I hit this all the time. It makes it so that your bounding box and outlines and everything and your center point gets hid. It can be useful for having an object selected and be able to tell what it looks like. But I'm going to go back and grab my mesh tool. The reason I want the edges here is because I want to know where this point is. So I just click in that, and that changes this into a mesh. So this is currently 3, 6, a 9-point mesh. So in order to edit this, if we click on any point and then select a color, it does a 50% gradient from this point to this point to this point to this point. And then if you select any of these lines here, you can move them, and that changes how it goes. So this can be very useful, because then you can do something like this where you select, these all these points here and turn them pink. And you can hold down Shift and select multiple points. I'm using the direct select tool, not the selection tool, to do this, A rather than V, because it allows me to select individual points rather than the whole object. So I'm holding down Shift and I'm clicking on these 3 points, and then I'm clicking on a brighter shade of pink. So that's one right here. I'm going to do the same thing here and select that. And you'll think, okay, well, this is all said and good, but it looks about the same as it does when we had that other one. So I'm going to select this one here and make that into a pink. So now we've got it going around pretty much the whole outside of it. Now what we want to do here is we want this to follow the edges. So one way you can do that is use this and move this to the edge, and then make the curve basically follow where you want it to go. Now I'm not trying to actually keep this directly under the lines. The reason for this is because that does not matter. We're going to use a clipping mask in order to hide it. I'll show you what a clipping mask is when it comes up. So we want it to follow this line right here. We want it to be a nice smooth curve. So we do basically that. And then this point would generally be about here. And we're adjusting this over like this. And then you know how it's a 50% gradient in between everything. So this is showing what angle everything is at. So if we pull this down, you'll see that it's getting lighter, and we can do this to make it even lighter still. So that line follows itself nicely. And this line, we can move it back and forth. We can adjust this in and out in order to get the brightness where we want it. So if we hide this and we look at the original, you'll see that it's closer to a white here. So in order to do that, one way we can do that is just pull this out, pull this down, and pull this across. So if we look at that, we still have the kind of like the brighter pink going from here and sliding out. And I'm actually going to pull this over a little bit more because I want it there. And then we still got the lighter color here. And we're still getting the bright pink up in here and here. I'm not trying to do this exact, I'm just trying to give you an idea. And then after this is said and done, I'm going to go to I'm going to make a copy of my flats layer. I'm actually going to hide this, select this, make a copy of it. Now, lock the layer, go back here, bring this layer back. I'm going to hit Control F or Edit, Paste in Front, and I'm going to turn the color to green so you can see what I did. So if we look at this layer here, I'm going to turn it green again. You'll see that this is just one shape that I've already traced. Since I've already traced it, I don't want to have to do it again. So I'm going to undo that, lock the layer, come back here, and so we have this image, which is what we want, and then we have this shape, which is what we want to appear. We want this green shape to appear there, but we want what is around it to be deleted out of there. Now we could go in and try to make a complicated mesh to make it fit to that, or we can bring this shape in front of it, select both of these. You can either click and drag over both of them like that, or you can click and then shift click the other one to select both, and then go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, or Control+7. I use these all the time. I usually use the shortcut key, but if you don't use them that often, you'll just have to find it. And what happens is we've now got a clipping mask made. I'm going to hide all the other layers so that you can see what it looks like. And then I'm going to change this to outline mode so that you can see what's happening here. So what's happening here is this is the shape, and this is the shape that is that's basically what is appearing. So everything outside of this is clipped off. So if we put it back to outline mode, and you can actually use the direct selection tool to come in and select that mask and edit it to wherever you want. So like let's say I pulled it way over here. We'll see that it's basically allowing you to hide what you need. Super handy for doing like gradient mesh and stuff like that, because you can adjust the clipping mask and you can adjust the mesh. And then I'm going to turn our inks layer back on. You'll see that looks pretty good. Alright, so that allowed us to get this piece in here. Now, the rest of the image is basically done the same way. If you look here, we could do this. You'll look here and you'll see, we've got a darker outline here, a lighter in here, and it's going back and forth. Same here. I could do all of that, but I just showed you how. I'm going to show you how to make a slightly more complicated mask now. We just showed you like a super simple one there. We're going to show you this one here. So I'm going to make a square. Again, color doesn't matter. I'm picking this green because it's simple for you guys to see it. Make sure it covers all of what you're trying to clip on. You can turn it into outline mode like this so it's easy to see what you're trying to do. Hit the U key in order to select it, and the mesh tool. I always click on the center point here in order to make it a perfect square. The reason for this, you can make a clipping mask on other shapes, but the reason for doing it as a square is, like, let's say we have this shape and we want to, we want to make a clip that follows along this curve here. If I hide this and try to throw a point in there, you may get it right, but if you try to go in and add extra points, you can end up with the points all over the place. I find it simpler to just start with a square and work your way across. Okay, so now we're actually trying to do this a little bit different than normal. We want to do this section of the eyes, the dark purple to flesh color. So in order to do that, we're going to have the middle part follow the middle line here. So we don't have to have this exact. I'm just using the direct selection tool, the white arrow key, or A, in order to manipulate the points. Okay, and then the same thing here. The reason I'm bringing this in is because if we look at the image here, you'll see that you've got kind of a fade from the purple down to a flesh color. And that makes it so that if we do something like this, we can actually do that fade as part of the mesh. So we're trying to, get this a little bit higher than the actual mesh and a little bit lower. And you'll see that the adjustment bars, I'm coming in and pulling them across like this. And then we'll do basically the same thing with this. Another thing that you can think about when you're doing this is you can think of it as like a 3D object. So for example, if you think about how her face is curving as we're doing this, you can then think of it as, okay, where's the angles coming from? Because, it's a 3D shape here. So basically you're trying to build, the 3D shape as points on there. So this is pretty simple. You can select a point, grab your eyedropper tool, and click on that point in order to, pick a color or what have you. And then, do the same thing here. And then if we bring this out and then hide the background layer, you'll see that, the curve is following pretty nicely. We've got a nice fade into that. If we pull in the flats layer, it brings it in pretty well. You will, however, notice that if we look at this, we have a little line of color that's not quite right. Now, the way I normally fix this is I go in and I select all of these 3 points because we want it to blend from the purple into the flesh color. And then we'll go in, after I select all of those, we want to get our opacity up, or our transparency. So, you go to Window, Transparency, and we have our transparency layer here. I'll set that to 0. And if we, this is, I'm going to label this mesh here. Problem we're running into here is when I went to our flats copy, we still have this pink layer. We'll delete that out of there. I'll lock her back up and put the mesh in. And you'll see now that, it's fading in perfectly. There's no hard line or anything. Okay, that's all and good. But if we look at the original image, you'll see that there is some extra points in here. It kind of juts up here, juts up here. Okay, well, we can fix that by coming in here and adding some extra points. So I put one here, and I'm going to put one here and one here. And now what we're going to do is grab this point and pull it up a little bit, and grab this point and pull it up a little bit. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to adjust these points a little bit so that they are a little bit smoother. And we'll hide that. And you'll see that, again, we have some problems, mainly transparency problems, because when we went in and added these extra points, you'll see if we look at the opacity on those, they're at 100%. So if we select them all, we can go in and change the opacity back to 0 on those points. It's following the curve colors still, right? So if we put that in, you'll see that we added that little hump in there. Now, this is where mesh is so handy, is that you can create complex gradient effects with just a couple of simple points that you couldn't do with just straight up applying a solid gradient to an object. Again, we can then come in and make a clipping mask on top of this now. If we look at this at the original again, I don't like that bump, so I'm not going to add it. But we don't want it this gradient again clipping into her ear and her hair on top. So in order to fix that, basically we're going to create a line. I'm going to change it to green again so you guys can follow what I'm doing here a little simpler. Remember the eye I created is in a layer up above this, so if I hide that, you'll see that the eye is on top, so what we're doing is just making it go behind. Now I don't have a pre-built color layer that I can just copy and make, so I'm making my own clipping mask here. So you'll notice that it doesn't need to follow this line perfectly. I'm just making one point across. So we want this portion to appear and this portion to not appear. So select that, hold down Shift and select that using the direct selection tool, or V. Go to Object, Clipping Mask Make, or Control 7, and if we hide these, you can see the clipping mask is hiding all of that. So there you go. Super simple, darker shade to lighter shade. If we look at the original, you can see that that we actually have some color variations in here. You'll see how it's going from a darker shade up here to kind of a curve here. We can do that using using the gradient mesh as well. So I'm going to come in here and select that portion there. And then I'm going to use this in order to pull the point over and make it into more of a curve. And then I'm going to do another one here and do that. And then I'm going to select that point and make it darker, and select that point to make it darker. Hide this. These points, for whatever reason, went to the green color because that's what I had selected here. So we can go in and select that color for these points. And these again are at 100%. So they should go down to 0. So that's a simple. And then here we want this point and this point to not be that darker. We want it to be this lighter shade. So we got a darker shade of purple up in this corner and here and here. And we can pull this up a little bit and you'll see that it changes how everything looks. Comes in handy for getting colors right where you want it. Like I could come in here, pull this whole point down lower, and set this color. If we select it here, we're on red, green, blue right now for color. It's easier to change it to HSB, and then we can darken it up a little bit, and you'll see that we get the corner darker now. So you can create nice subtle shading effects that way. You can also do stuff like, let's say we wanted to do like a line across this whole thing. The easiest way I would say to do that would be something like this, where you grab this, pull it in, pick a purple, make it darker, use a mesh and click on one point in order to make it all the way across like that. Select these 2 points and set them to 0. Figure out, where you want the two, or the fade to start and end, and then go in and add the curves. And then come in here and use add some extra points in order to set these wherever you think they should be. The ones on top don't matter because they're all just solid color, so I'm not too concerned about those. And then, you can just keep adding points where you need them. And then I'm going to use the direct selection tool to select the whole thing. Pick that purple just so we're setting the whole thing to that color. Use the direct selection tool to go across. Select each of these points here and set the opacity to 0. And what you're doing then is you're getting a nice fade between the colors that you have. So we're doing 100% to 0%, so you're getting the curves going approximately where you want them. You want these to be pretty much smooth. And then, let's say you want the color beneath to shine through a little more. You can select that and change your transparency to something like multiply. And you'll see that it then interacts with the colors behind it. And, after I set it to multiply, I could set the opacity down a little bit. And then you're given a little highlight right up above all of that. Again, we could, turn the opacity down a little bit so it's a little more subtle. You can then adjust the adjustment bars here to adjust how much of the curve is in there. And then after you're done with that, then you go in and make another clipping mask in order to, hide this. You'll notice that I'm hiding stuff behind outlines a lot. That's something you'll have to think about when you first start doing something like this is, where can I hide the different shapes that I'm doing? Then make your clipping mask. And then you get more of a layered effect going on in there. So, there is the basics of meshing and using gradients in an image. I'm not going to do this whole thing. I'll just, say that it's super powerful. If we turn all of this on, you'll see, there's a gradient version, there's a mesh version. And then if we zoom in on the eyes and I hide everything else, and we just open up the eyes layer, you'll see that I did this using a combination of mesh. So we'll unlock that. And then grab it. So here's a mesh that I did. It started off as a square. I added some points and moved it in and out, and it changed the opacity at various points in order to, make it clean. So that that's 0%, that's 41%, that's 100%. So that created movement in between it. This is just a solid shape on top of it. This is, if we select it, it's a circle with, I did the same thing with the gradient mesh. I clicked on this and added a couple of points, and then that's 100%, and then this point here is 0%. So, and I did the same thing with the point here, the point here, the point here, the point here are all 0%. That's how I did the, 0 to 100 effect that's in the eye there. You should think about using opacity, color changes and everything between itself. A couple of quick tips as well. When you're doing something like this, you can drag across, you can use the direct selection tool and drag across multiple points to select them, which can be super handy. Another thing to be aware of is that changing colors in between two very different colors can not make for the prettiest of looks. A lot of times it's better to do something like this, where you set your pink, okay, and we want to go from pink to green. Well, if we look at the color change between the two, it gets kind of gray. It doesn't look like it's, a very nice changeover. So one thing you can do is we can copy and paste this in front, select this whole thing, and change it to that green, and then we can go to each individual point and change the opacity down to 0. So you can do like color changes on top like that. And then with this you can also play around with like blend modes as well. So like with this we have it set to multiply or lighten or darken, screen or overlay, or difference. You can get some wacky effects going playing with the different transparency layers as well as blend modes. So that's something to look into. An old coloring thing that a lot of people do is, pick the exact same color and set the blend mode to multiply. That creates, like basically a richer pink down to the original color. So, I hope this helped. I've tried to do this like 20 times and never figured out a good way of doing it. I think this is the best way. I like it. So if you've got any questions or comments, let me know. I'll be happy to try to help. Have a good one, everyone.